is the truth? Where do we find the truth? In the Word of God. That's where we find out what truth is. This is where we find out if our theology lines up with God's truth. Friends, as Ross mentioned, we are starting a new message series today. And a part of this message series, one of the things that we're going to be doing is memorizing a couple of verses of Scripture together. We do this every once in a while, and part of me thinks maybe we should be doing it more often than every once in a while, just helping us all learn some verses of God's Word so that we can hide them in our hearts so that we may not sin against Him. And that's what the Bible tells us. If only that were the passage that we're going to memorize this series, make life easier. What we are going to be doing is we are going to be looking at Psalm 37, verse 3 and 4. And we're going to be sharing this twice every week together. First time that we share it, the words will be on the screen. And then after this week, each week we'll make a couple of the words disappear to help us in moving us towards remembering it and memorizing it, or rememorizing it if we want to save time today. In the way that we do it is we do it in what we call Awana fashion, where the address, which is Psalm 37, 3 and 4, we will say that at the beginning of when we say it, and we will say it at the end of the verses we say it as well. So it'll go something like this, and join along with me if you can. Psalm 37, 3 and 4. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37, 3 and 4. And we want this to get into our hearts, right? Because the last week of this series, we're going to be talking about this passage, and then we'll all know it, right? So join me one more time. Psalm 37, 3 and 4. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in a land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37, 3 and 4. We are starting this new series, and the new series is a fresh look at the Ten Commandments. Why are we doing this? Well, it's because what I see in our world is that we have this world around us that really thinks that we should be able to make any decisions that we want, that we should make the decisions of how our life should go, that we should be able to decide even the things that we do and even the times that we do them. And because of that, that belief, that idea has seeped into the church, and now there's a bunch of Christians, people who are wanting to live for God, and we have this in the back of our heads to say, yeah, so we get to decide what we do. And then we come across things in Scripture, and we start to either struggle with them, or what sometimes we do is we just kind of ignore them, especially stuff in the Old Testament. Because we often think that, well, Jesus came and everything changed. Yes, everything changed. But God's Word, Old Testament and New Testament, is still God's Word. And hopefully one of the things that we will learn is that the Ten Commandments is actually there for a reason. And this is an enduring reason even for us today. And so that's what we're going to do is we're going to look at these Ten Commandments. And then, we're going to try and see we often think of the negatives, the thou shalt nots, and stop doing this and that type of stuff. But what we are going to do is then we are going to shift over each week to the life of David. Where in 1 Samuel chapter 13, David was mentioned to be a man after God's own heart. David wasn't perfect. Scripture shows a bunch of things that he messed up on in life. But yet he's still called this one who is after God's heart. And so we're going to look at this guy who wasn't perfect and how he was seeking to live for God, how he was seeking to follow through on the 10 Commandments. And so we're going to be seeing some things in his life as well as seeing some of the things that he had written down, some poems, some songs like what we're going to be looking at today. And just so to help us to understand what it would now mean for us to live out the 10 Commandments in today's time. You with me? You understand where we're going with all this? Because I don't want to have to say that every week. You get it, right? Okay, so there was this man, he went to the doctor because he was in such extreme amounts of pain. He was experiencing pain from the tip of his head to the bottom of his feet. And so now the doctor's there and he's checking him out, just to try and see what's wrong, blood pressure and checking the heart and the eyes and the ears and all that kind of stuff. And when all was said and done, the doctor said to the guy, he said, I've just looked you over and I cannot find anything wrong with you. And the guy says, but I'm experiencing pain everywhere. And so the doctor said, well, why don't you just start touching the places on your body where you are experiencing pain? And so the guy does, and he starts touching his leg, and he screams out in pain. He touches his arm, he screams out in pain. He touches his head, he screams out in pain. And the doctor said, I think I know what's wrong. You have a dislocated finger. Now, that's a made-up picture for those of you who are wondering. There were much grosser ones out there, and my wife turned me down on that one. But this is just one of those silly illustrations that hopefully can connect us into where we're heading today. Because this man was experiencing pain everywhere in his life. And for some of us, we experience pain, we experience hurt, we experience frustration. Things aren't going our way. And it gets to the point where there's a lot of areas in our life where we're experiencing this stuff. And as we do, we begin to get overwhelmed. And how do we get out of these situations? How do we work through these situations? And what I want to submit to you today is the same thing that doctor said to the guy. Says, I think you really just have one problem. It's not pain everywhere that you're dealing with, right? It's really in just one place. And what I'm submitting to all of us today is no matter what we are going through, no matter what we are dealing with, I suggest to you today that there is one thing that we can do, one thing we can put into place in our lives that will begin to positively impact everything that you are going through. And that's the beginning of what we'll hear today in the Ten Commandments. Lord, help us today to begin to understand why these commandments are even there and what that means for us today. I mean, we are thousands of years from this happening. And yet, God, your word is telling us that it's still relevant to us. Help us to look at these commandments with fresh eyes and really begin to understand why you've called us to these things and what that would look like in our lives, Lord. Help us with that today. May the words that I share, the things that we all hear, be acceptable and pleasing to you, God. For you are our rock and our blessed Redeemer. Amen. Okay, so let's make sure we all understand how the Ten Commandments happened. All right, so God miraculously delivered the Hebrew people out of Egypt. Right? There were these, through Moses, he starts to share all these 10 plagues to help finally to get Yul Brynner, if you know the movie I'm talking about, finally get Yul Brynner to say, fine, take the people, right? So the Pharaoh says, take the people and you can go. And then God miraculously parts the Red Sea and the people walk through. And then as Pharaoh's army starts coming, God closes up the sea and the whole entire army is destroyed. God's people are free and now they're heading into the desert. And God reminds them that he has made a covenant with them, that he was going to be their God, and they were to be his people, becomes this new covenant that he invites. So Moses, he heads up on this mountain, and he ends up coming down with these 10 commandments. Now, the word commandments, and you'll hear me say it, and just be thinking the entire time that when I'm saying commandment, I'm also using this word because this is what it means. It means covenant. Okay, and so what is a covenant? Well, a covenant is when two people are agreeing and they're making this commitment. It's almost like they are pledging their allegiance to one another. And so now if we're starting to look at the 10 commandments as the 10 covenants, then what we will begin to see is there is this commitment, this pledge that has taken place between God and the children of God on what is going to be lived out. Because we don't just pledge an allegiance. The words then matter to what we have committed ourselves to. And so Moses shares what God's 10 covenants are. And actually, he does a whole lot more, but we're focusing in on these 10 as people have. And today we specifically focus in at the beginning of what those covenants, those commandments say. And so starting in Exodus chapter 20, verse 1, it says, "And God, he spoke these words." And I just want to stop to remind us, who's speaking these words? Yeah, it's God. God is the one who has made the decision that these are the things that are important to us. It is not humans. We are not deciding what's best for one another. This is God saying, here is what's best for you, my covenant people. I've committed to being faithful to you. I've committed to being your God. But now you're invited into this relationship where we are pledging our allegiance to one another. And so God says, so I'm going to be faithful. You've seen it. I have rescued you. I have delivered you. I'm going to be the God that makes that available to you throughout your entire life. But now it's your turn to understand what it means then to live for me, to pledge your allegiance to me. And so God then speaks these words, right? And they then become more important than any other words that have ever been spoken in our lives, because they come from God. And he says, I am the Lord, your God. Now it's interesting because we would think that these are kind of the same words, but the word Lord here, it's the term Yahweh. It's the Hebrew word Yahweh. And the idea behind that is that he is the covenantal God, the God who chooses to be in relationship with his children. And so he starts by saying, I am the covenantal God. I choose to be in relationship with you. And so I am the covenantal God, your God. Now the word here is Elohim. So it's a different word. And the idea behind this word is that this is the majestic creator of all. So now if we start putting all of this together, God is saying, I am the one who is committing to be in this relationship with you and you with me. And I am the one who created everything, including you. And so where does that put us on the pecking order here, friends? That's how God starts this out. He says, I am the covenantal God, the one in relationship with you, and yet I am the creator of the world, and I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And so in order to be in this covenantal relationship, your pledging of allegiance includes these things. And he says, you shall have no other gods before me. So the idea behind this is not that God is necessarily first. You know, God isn't first among a variety of different gods or things that we do as his children. No, God is it. God is everything. We can't have a God first and then a bunch of other things second. The image would be that God is here, and whatever else you think is important in your life, that I think is important in my life, family, making sure that I can provide for them, all that kind of stuff, that's here. I mean, so you start to get the picture of what God is trying to help the people understand. You want to be in relationship with me, that's great, but I'm number one. And number two is actually number 37 in your life. It's got to be that different for all that you do. Nothing else compares to me. God is number one. So you shall have no other gods before you. Place God first is what he's saying. Place God first. And so he starts by talking about your heart, your mind. So here, these are the things, as you are thinking about what is important in your life, what is it? God. The answer is quick. It's simple. The covenantal God is my priority in my life. And here's the rub, right? So how often am I not thinking that God is the priority in my life? So then I'm reminded by this gift of the 10 commandments, the 10 covenants, to say, oh, that's right. I'm not supposed to have any other gods before me. God, you are the most important things in my life. Everything I do, I'm going to align around the fact that you are the most important thing. Period. And then God goes on to say, so you shall not make for yourself an image form of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath or in the waters below. And so now, so he's moved from internal, our heart, our mind, to external, right? And so now, what you do with your hands, what you do with your life, you can't make that an idol. You can't make that a God in your lives. I mean, yeah, there's things that we have to do, but we do them in the presence and the understanding of who God is and what God is calling us to do, which is to be in relationship, a covenantal relationship with him. So don't mess that up by start focusing on the things that you get to do, that I get to do with my hands. And it's interesting because what's happening with the Israelites while Moses is receiving this information? Do you know? Right? They get to the point where they're saying, Moses isn't coming back. We haven't seen him in a while. You know what we should do? Let's all gather a bunch of gold together. We'll make a golden calf and we'll claim that that's our God and we'll start bowing down to worship that. Which sounds ridiculous when we look back at it. But imagine you're sitting there with no direction in your life. What are you going to do? You're going to figure out something to do and do it. Or you're just going to let life happen and see what comes. And Moses came down and saw what was happening. He's so frustrated. He smashes the tablets and now he has to go do it all again. Because the people were thinking that what they did with their hands was more important than the covenantal God. It says, don't focus on the things that you make with your hands with equal importance to God. It is so secondary to who God is and placing God first in our lives. Not only that, but you shouldn't bow down to them. You shouldn't worship them. These things shouldn't be on a level where they are as important to you as your relationship with God, with placing God first in your life. Never should they be on the same level. Right? It says, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Now the word jealous here, it means zealous. And the idea behind that is nothing should equal in comparison to God. I am the God that nothing compares to me. So don't put anything in your life that is going to be on par or more important than me. And then he says this thing that we have to understand Scripture in a broader perspective, because he says, punishing the children for the sins of the generation, the third and fourth generation, to those who hate me. And this sounds terrible. And this is my opinion, right? Just looking at the word as well as the way other scholars have tried to explain this word. Most scholars have used the word visit for this as opposed to punishing the children. Because if you look at the word here, often what it means is that God is visiting and caring for. And yet for some reason the NIV used the word punish. And maybe it means punished, but a lot of people believe that what this is talking about is what goes on in your life in regards to your sin. It does have an impact on your family, your children, on the people around you. But I will still visit them even though those sins are happening. I will care for them. We punish ourselves is what we do. I mean, look at what it says in Ezekiel 18:20. Again, we're trying to get the whole Bible in perspective here. What God is telling the people at this point, he says, the one who sins is the one who dies. We, because of our own sin, is the end result for us is our own death. Children are not going to share the guilt of the parent, nor the parent are going to share the guilt of the child. The righteousness of the righteous will be credited to them. The wickedness of the wicked will be charged against them. And so we start to get this very, very clear picture that God isn't necessarily punishing our children because of the things that we do. But we punish our children because of the things that we do. And this is my opinion here, right? But the things that you focus on in life, I think become amplified in your children. Because our children don't know what we're thinking nearly as much as what we're saying or doing. And if your priority is God in everything that you do, and your kids see that, and your kids see you're saying that, that's going to help them to know how to live. But if the priority of God is one of other things that you do in your life, then what are our kids going to see? We don't need to spend some time in God's word or go to church or whatever you want to call it this week because we're on vacation. What are our kids seeing? And then that becomes amplified in the lives of our children. They think that what it means to live for Jesus Christ is to do it almost as good as what my parents do. And when I'm mad at them, I'm going to certainly try to do the opposite. Because that seems to be what kids in this fallen world do. And so, yeah, the kids will be punished, but the thing that I love is what God is saying is I'm going to visit with them. I'm going to care for them, even as the sin begins to get amplified in the lives of the next generation, which we're seeing in our country as well. And then he goes to the other side, says, but show love to 1,000 generations. And again, now we're trying to get a picture of this covenantal God. And God is saying, yet I'm going to love you, and I'm going to care for you, and I'm going to help you. Those who love me and keep my covenant. This is what we're called to do. So I very practically just started thinking, how can I help people understand what this looks like? And the best I could come up with, forgive me, right? But the best I could come up with is just kind of give you a picture of my typical week, or at least this was my last week. And I know some of it's going to be really hard to read, but this is the morning of the last 7 days of my week. And so you'll see on Sunday morning church, that's probably an important thing. And so, so that's on my list. And then on Monday morning, I meet with the prayer team, the Circle School District thing that was a part of Monday as well. Tuesday morning, I meet with this guy named Tom. We're accountability partners so that I can be authentic in my relationship, so that I can be authentic and living for Christ in front of everybody. So that's a part of it. You'll see that sermon preps bounced or put around in there because if I don't do it during the week, my Fridays and Saturdays are really just filled up with sermon prep time, and then I don't get a day off. We'll get to that in the future here when it comes to the 10 covenants, right? And so you see this picture. Oh, and then you'll see Wednesday morning, I have this early 6:30 a.m. meeting with a gentleman. It's the only time we could work it out. I love him. I hate that time. Okay? And so then if we were to start looking at the afternoon, there are a couple days this week where my son had golf tournaments, so I put them in my calendar because I didn't want to miss them. And you'll see that, on Wednesday that I had this Awana, and so I do music with Awana, I do the opening and close. I also snuck a meeting with the tech team in between, those things. And then the elders and the deacons, they met that night. And so you see all this stuff going on. And then Friday afternoon, I had to call to see if I'm on jury duty this week. The answer is yes. Yeah, pray for me. Or pray for the people who are in the courtroom. I don't know. But so that's what's going on. And I started to think, if you were to pull out your phone and look at what your typical week looks like, if you were to start scrolling through next week and the week after that and maybe a month out, and you start seeing what's in your calendar, because how many of us use calendars? A lot of us do. I would submit to you that this helps us to see our priorities in life. And I started looking at my calendar, and what I realized is there are things, some that I do, right, that aren't in my calendar. And why aren't they in my calendar? If they're a priority for me, why am I not putting them in my calendar? Why am I not putting in the time to spend with God? If we're supposed to put him first, shouldn't he be in our calendars? And so Sunday, so I added this green stuff just to give us an image. So Sunday, why wouldn't I or we be connected to or involved in a small group? If we, the Benton Church, as disciples making disciples, are trying to help people to love, learn, and live, and love is worship, learn is to get involved in a small group, and live is to use our gifts to bring glory to God, then why wouldn't I have a specific small group on my calendar so that I can connect with a group of believers, study scripture with them, pray with one another, and share the concerns that I have? Because that would help me to put God first. Why don't I have my devotion times in the morning in my calendar? What would that show? What would that remind me of? Well, I can't get up that early. I know. That's why Wednesday I did mine later. Because of Scott. But I got to place God first in my life. We have got to place God first in our life. That's the covenant that God says that we are committing to have in this relationship we have with him. He is to be first because he alone is God. All right, so now let's take a look at David, okay? And we'll do this each week. And so David, this man after God's own heart, we see the psalm that he wrote. And I think it helps us to realize that God is to be first in what this looks like in our lives. And so David starts off Psalm 16 by saying, keep me safe, my God, right? For you, I take refuge, which we don't know what was going on in David's life at this point, right? But what we do know about David is he started off as a shepherd, and we know that animals would attack, people would try to steal the sheep, and so he was always a little bit under the gun there, although they didn't have guns back then. We know later he becomes a soldier in the army, so maybe he's asking for protection, refuge, a safe haven in the midst of difficult times and situations. Maybe it's happening then or when he's king and a commander of the entire army. So it could be then. But here's what we do know is David, in some situations in his life, is seeking God out and saying, God, please keep me safe. I'm not sure how I'm going to get through this. Keep me safe. I say, he says to the Lord, you are my Lord. Now again, we have two different words here. The first Lord word is the covenantal God, Yahweh. You are the covenantal God, and you are my Lord. Now here, the word is Adonai. And what Adonai means is the one who reigns supreme over everything. The sovereign one is what Adonai means. And so what's David saying? My life's a mess. I'm in trouble. I need some safe refuge. And so I'm going to the one that I'm in this relationship with because you are sovereign over everything and you can get me through this situation. You are my Lord, and apart from you, I have no good thing. Which literally means, God, nothing compares to you. That's what no good thing means. Nothing compares to you. So David is crying out to his God in prayer, saying, God, I need your help. And you're the only one I can go to because nothing compares to you. Now, I had 5 volunteers that I asked to help with something. Would you please come up right now? Hey, they're getting up. That's a plus. And what I asked them to do was just to grab an object and take that object, and I want them to share with you their name, what the object is. You want to stay down there? That's fine. Well, I'll come down here. Then it won't be weird. Right? I won't be leaning down over Kim. So what I asked them to do is pick an object that is a symbol of something that we think is good in our lives. Because what James said is, apart from God, there's no good thing, right? And so what are some good things in our lives? And so they're going to say what that is, and then they're going to talk about how it's a good thing, but it could become a bad thing in our lives. So you're first. That's what you get by standing by me.
Hi, I'm Kim Wagner, and I'm going to tell you what this is. This is a watch, and it tells our time. And it's a very good thing because we need to make our appointments on time. We need to have dinner at a certain time for our husbands or our wives.
You could repeat that one for my wife if you would. Sorry, keep going.
I'm not saying I do it 7 nights a week. But I have always been a person who wanted to do time fast. I walked fast. I talked fast. My mother used to say, slow down, Kimmy. I've often thought I should have had that tattooed somewhere. I turned 66 last week, and I was like, I've slowed down. It took me all this time to slow down. I want to tell you that time is a great thing, but it's also short. And it's shorter from 40 on, I'm going to say. You think you are just zipping along and you're going to be like that, and you look at people sometimes with gray hair. I did. And I thought, what are these people moving so slow for? Come on, let's get going. It's time. Let's go. I had a friend, I have to share this. I had a friend one New Year's Eve, it was actually 2019. And we were over at his house, and he had what are those things called? Slide rulers or measuring?
Tape measure.
Tape measure. And he said, Kim, pull the end of this. He said, first of all, how long do you expect you're going to live? And I said, I don't know. Who knows? 80 years. And so he says, okay, let's pull it out to 80. And he goes, now how many years have you already lived? So 3 years ago, 63. So he sucked it back in. And it showed me how much time I had left. And that was mind-blowing that night. And what happened? We hit 2020, at midnight that night. And so many of us lost people and things. But what I want to share real fast is that you can see I've had double hip replacement, and that followed 2 back surgeries and a shoulder replacement. It has slowed me down. But during this time, I have really begun to cherish my time with God. And I will tell you, through all of us have had things that have happened personally, financially, emotionally. God never lets you down. God does not care what time it is. This is all about God's time. And I just wanted to share to you, I got a watch on. I hardly look at it.
So why'd you steal my watch?
Because I stole yours. I'm going to see what I can see.
He's going to sell it.
Anyway, if you're young, slow down. You've only got this few times to be with those babies, your parents, your best friends. And if you're older, just God wants you to enjoy that time. Enjoy every day and delight in Him.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You just set it on the front and somebody will take it for me. Yeah. So the other thing I would say is if she has 17 years left or I have 26 years left based on the 80, what I tend to think is what am I going to do with this? And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because what does God want me to do? Lord, what do you want me to do? Vicki, your turn.
All right, hard act to follow, but I picked hand sanitizer. We were out there and he said pick something. It was chips or hand sanitizer. Okay. So what's good about the hand sanitizer is, sometimes out in the barn, when you're in the barn, you shovel stuff, which means poop. So I'm out there shoveling, get my hands real nasty, working. I tend to work so much that I don't stop for food. Sometimes I'll run through the house, grab a PBJ. But if I were at a horse show or something, no soap, no water, right there, real handy, hand sanitizer would be a nice thing to have. So that's the good part about it. Sometimes if I don't have soap and water, it's quick, it's handy, there you go. I was trying to think of bad things. So sometimes I've read that if we overuse hand sanitizer, which these days, I'm sorry, people kind of do overuse it, it also kills good bacteria with the bad bacteria on your hands. So I think sometimes we can over-sanitize so much that we don't build immunity. I mean, we were raised kind of rodeo, so God made dirt and dirt don't hurt was our thing. But sometimes I think it could be overused and it could be a bad thing. Or if I'm over worried about being sanitized and I chase you down and, use your hand sanitizer before I can shake your hand or touch you. It'll be a thing where people really don't want to be around me if I'm chasing you down with hand sanitizer. So that's the bad part of it, I would think. So that's what I had to work with. So there you go.
Excellent. And thank you. Thanks for trying.
You can have it back.
So nice of you.
Okay, I chose car keys, and you use car keys for your car, and cars transport you everywhere. What else am I supposed to say?
So why it's a good thing and how it can become a bad thing?
Cars help you go everywhere, and everybody probably uses them. But the bad things about them are you get into car wrecks, you run out of gas, they cost money, and I think that's
good.
That's it.
And helpful tip: don't use those without your parents' permission. Okay, just a suggestion. And sometimes the things that we have, like cars and houses, they become so important to us that they become more important than God.
Okay, I have a football. How it can be good is you play sports, you have fun in sports, and how they can be bad is you can have injuries. Yeah.
Says the guy with a couple surgeries behind him. Yeah, and not only that, but it becomes so important, we start adjusting our lives around the sports. Not the things that we play, the things that we watch, they can become a bad thing. Thank you. And last but certainly not least.
All right. We all have a cell phone in our pocket, right? Cell phones can be fantastic because we can use them to communicate with other people. We can make our plans, fill our calendars up with the right things. But they can also become distractions from the things that we should be doing in our lives. All throughout church, my security cameras have been going off like crazy because there's a branch blowing around in front of the camera. They can be distracting, right? We can turn our cell phones into idols, sitting around the kitchen table instead of engaging with our family and having a conversation, asking them how their day is going. We just look at our phones or turn on YouTube while we eat our dinners and keep ourselves from focusing on what is important.
Excellent. Can we give them all a round of applause? And we begin to see on how even the good things we sometimes put in the place of the God thing in our lives. And David is just reminding himself that God is the one who is sovereign and over all, and nothing compares to him. All the stuff that we put into our lives that we think is so important, it's nothing compared to him. And so then David starts to say, he says, I say to the holy people who are in the land, the ones who are set apart, the ones who are doing the God thing as best they know how, he says, I say to them, they are the noble ones. The word noble, it means majestic. They are the majestic ones. If you were to look in the world, you can see them as being different from the rest of the world, right? And David says, I take delight in those who are setting themselves apart to fulfill and live in this covenant that God has. Those who run after other gods, though, they will suffer more and more. They will become more distracted from the covenantal God. They will start to see these things as more important in their life, which we've already said begins to have an impact on the lives of the people around us and even beyond. And so if I were to just very practically say, well, so what's David trying to say here? You know, I think there's two things that God, the originator of good, and based on this truth, we know two things, right? Number one is good has one source. And what's that source? God. And so all the stuff that we have, it very well might be good and it may be a gift from God. But if something is not good, it does not come from God. And so you may have something in your life that you think is good. I may have something that I really, really enjoy, right? But if that takes place or starts to compete with number one in my life, friends, that is not from God. And that means it isn't good in our lives. And then what we start doing is we start running in this way, and the idea of suffering enters into our lives. And it happens more and more. Literally, the scripture says it literally multiplies the suffering in our lives and those around us. Which then made me think that the devil clearly is entering in at this time where we are allowing these other things to be important in our lives. So much so that if things don't go our way, we experience some negativity with that. And what happens? Well, I think Satan uses our limited understanding of what it means to put God most important in our lives and start placing other things in equality with God or even close with God. And those things where we're confusing ourselves with what is truly right, Satan will enter into those times and he will help us to focus on the pain rather than the purpose of what's going on in our lives. Focus on the suffering, the hurt, the why aren't things working out in our lives, which leads to the second one. And what Satan will do is he will begin to plant doubts about what really is good, about the goodness of God in our lives by tempting us to develop what's called a victim mentality. This shouldn't be happening to me. That is not fair. I don't think that's right. And when we start heading down that path, Satan just continues to help the suffering in our lives, the frustration, the isolation that we will begin to put in our lives to happen more and more, and it just begins to multiply and multiply in our lives. God wants to be first in our lives. So there's a section in the middle here where David just continues to talk about his relationship with God, but then he shifts to something right at the end, and as I try to move through here, he says, therefore, because of this covenantal relationship that I have with God, and that he is good, and everything good comes from God, he says, my heart is glad. He said, my tongue rejoices, my body also will rest secure. Even though things look bad and I'm seeking refuge, God, I know that because of you, things are going to be okay. I can have this sense of peace. You're not going to abandon me, and you're not going to abandon me to the realm of the dead. Now, David starts talking about hell, and he says, you're not going to abandon me to hell at some point, even though I'm in this place where the world seems against me and things aren't going right. You're still there, God. And you're not going to let me, because of my covenantal relationship with you, you're not going to let me experience hell, eternal separation from God, nor will you let your faithful ones see decay. David's physical body, scripture talks about it. It's rotting in the ground. But the presence of David, his soul, is with the presence of God. He says, something's going to happen with my body, but that doesn't change the fact that this covenantal relationship I have with you, God, is secure. And God, you make known, he starts talking about how we live our lives. You make known the path of life. What's the path of life? I think David was referencing something at the end of God making the covenant with the people, the followers of him. And so right at the end of Deuteronomy, he says, I've set before you, not just the 10, but all the covenants, right? I've set before you today life and prosperity or death and destruction. You get to choose which one you want. This is what God has told the people. And do you want life and fulfillment in your life? Or do you want things that cause you to separate from yourselves and leads you down a path of ruin when it comes to this covenantal relationship with God? And Moses, when he wrote this, what God told him, he says, for I command you today to what? To love the Lord your God, walk in obedience to him, keep his commands, his covenant, decrees, and laws. Then you will live, increase, and the Lord will bless you in the land that you're about to possess. And so what David is reminding us is we have this choice before us. And God, you made known the path of life. And the path of life is placing you first. The covenantal relationship with you is the first thing. And when you do that, God, you fill me with joy in your presence and eternal pleasures at your right hand. That this isn't something that happens to us here and while we are on earth, but has an impact on the eternal life that we get to experience one way or another. And the path of life, of loving God and obeying him and being in that covenant relationship with him, that helps us to experience that life on this earth as well as eternity. Because those, as we place God first, he alone is the way to eternity. It only comes through believing that God sent his son Jesus to pay the penalty of our sin, died and rose again. And we say, Jesus, you did that for me. Thank you. I am yours. And what does that yours mean? I accept the covenantal relationship that you invite me to be a part of. And I choose to live for you.
I was angry at God. Why did you take it away from me?
I remember just saying, whoever you are, I'm going to prove that you're not real.
I was at the lowest point I'd ever been in my entire life.
I have to make my body a certain way. I hate you, 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 I hate you.
I don't know how to process this. I don't know where to begin with this. I don't know how to deal with this.
I was driven by hatred.
That night I died inside.
I just remember getting shot in my neck.
No one could help, and it just hurt all the time.
I'm a junkie.
Jesus, please save me. I surrender all of this.
I just felt this peace come over me.
Like a weight that's taken off of you.
He is enough.
I am second.
I am second.
I am second. I am second. I am second. I am second.
Lord Jesus, may we realize that you are number one. Thank you for inviting us to be in this relationship with you. Help us to place ourselves second and trust you with whatever's going on in our lives. And God, help us to begin to know and understand what it means to place you first and what that looks like this afternoon, this week. So Lord, I think you're calling me to a different life. May you help me to see what that is. May you help all of us to see what that is. And may we uphold and fulfill our side of this covenant. And God, you know that I will stumble and struggle doing this, so help me as we start walking that path. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for watching this week's message. We hope you found it both encouraging and helpful. If you did, please click the like button and share with your friends. If you want to hear when new messages are posted, please subscribe to the Benton Church. We also invite you to join us on site for worship. We're located in Benton, Kansas, just east of Wichita. Our Sunday services start at 10:30 and our doors are open to everyone. For more information, please check out our website at thebentonchurch.org.
What do you know about God?
He loves us. He died for our sin. He helps us. He's powerful. And he loves you.